Welcome. This is video 1, pre and post workout stretching. It's important to understand that not all men are created equal. You're not the same. Each of us is completely different. They always say you're unique just like the next person. It's absolutely true. Every single one of you out there is different. Ladies, men, men to ladies, okay? But there are certain basics that you need to observe when you're stretching. Okay? So if I can ask Chris, come over and lie down, first of all.
On my front or back?
On your back, please.
Legs straight or raised?
Straight, please. That's important when you're lying down flat to realise that the lower back is arched. Things that you never do is do things with straight legs and your back will be arched and excessively so. It's a place called the lordosis. Now you will damage the lordosis and you'll start doing things, stretch and everything else, and your back aches, and you will interpret it as being good stuff for the back. You're probably traumatised in lordosis, the subclinical trauma under the surface that I spoke of earlier. So it's important that if you're going to stretch, the first place to stretch is to stretch that lower back. Now, Chris has got straight legs, okay? Now, one thing you avoid in stretching is straight legs. Okay, so the first thing you do is you bend the legs at the knee.
Both or?
Both, please.
Off the ground?
And place them onto the ground. Now, that automatically allows your back to lower. There's much ado given saying, please push your back into the ground. If you're pushing your back into the ground, it's difficult to relax because basically you need muscular work to push the back into the ground. So if you have postural problems, it's another matter, and that needs to be addressed. But under normal circumstances, you shouldn't try to push the back in, you should just relax. The instructor or the person with you or your partner can look underneath. If there's a pronounced gap in your back, then you may have a problem with your posture. You need to get it looked at. But from a normal, standard point of view, to keep the back relaxed, nothing more is required than to keep the natural arch in place as Chris's back is now. Now, when you're doing this, remember, ladies, that even in the lying position, you're different to the men in terms of that all women, their pelvis tilts forward 7 to 10 degrees, a man's does not, which means that a woman's bottom pushes out more. Therefore, she will often naturally have a bigger arch in her lower back. Now, sometimes when this is seen, it's interpreted as being, that's not good news. It's a big arch. It's a mistake sometimes. Because of the pelvis angle and the buttocks being pushing out more, the appeared angle that seemed to be the root of the problem is actually not. So in both cases, how much arch there is in the back, you can pull back with the leg. And you should do this to start with individually. So if I ask Chris now to grab hold of his knee, and put one left leg, please, and pull it back towards you. That's right.
Breathe in or out?
Yeah. And just exhale and then pull it to you. Then resume breathing normally. And when Chris does this now, he's actually stretching one side of his lower back. Okay. If you lift both legs up, please put it down, Chris. That's right, bring the other one. Now grab hold of that one. Pull it back. Stay with that for me if you would. If you lift both legs up at the same time to grab them, the very action of lifting both legs, just that one instance, could push something in place. It sounds like overdoing it in terms of advice, but you can cause it. I've seen it quite a few times over the years. So you're best always to bring one leg up to start with, to stretch your lower back this way. If you have shoulder problems, this is causing problems in the front shoulder, then you need to lengthen the arms out and run the hands down to your mid-shin to do it, to make sure your hands stay straight. But sometimes the tension of pulling can cause a front shoulder problem in other people. It's important that you're comfortable. Now before putting the other leg up, if you would please, Chris, just let that leg down to the ground.
Straight or
bend, please, that's it. Keeping that left leg bent, bring it back towards you. And hold on there. Okay. Once you've done this with both legs a couple of times, then you've introduced your back to the situation where legs are coming up. You can then, please, if you let that leg down bent, Chris, please, now together now bring them back and grab both. So do one each side first. Then, once you've introduced that I've done this one now, I've done this one now, then bring both back and bring them back to you. Doing that will make you very, very safe in terms of your back. And the most important thing to stretch before you work out is your lower back and your hamstrings. If you have to make a choice and you don't want to spend all day doing it, then you need to make a choice of certain groups, and they're the big ones that you need to stretch. The smaller ones will accommodate, but the big ones are the ones you need to address when you do this. Okay, let both legs down the ground, please, Chris. And when you've done this is also a good thing to do. Please now very gently take your knees side to side. Just rock them side to side gently. And what this does This also releases any tension on the sciatic nerve and something next to it called the piriformis. So they're right next to each other. So you just cover the base just in case before you get up.
And I keep my arms by my side.
Yes, please. Focus on keeping in your back. Think of the roll. Okay, now stop in the middle for me. Now very gently now, put your hands together like this for me.
Yeah.
Very gently take them down back over your head. That's it. Don't try and force them down. Bend your arms sufficiently so you can touch your little fingers to the ground. That's it. Keep it like that for me. That's it. Down to there. It's not about you reaching well away from you, because no one person has even shoulder alignment. I will have one elbow up more than the other, or one arm will extend more than the other. It's important. Just go down with what your body is telling you. What you're actually doing by doing this, in actual fact, because your feet are now anchored, your back is safe because your legs are bent and your feet are on the ground. Your back is arching when you're going back, but it's naturally so. This is not straight. So when you're reaching out like this, you're spreading the rib cage. And the muscles in between are called the intercostals. So when you do this, you actually get an extra stretch right the way down your ribs to your collarbone by doing it. And you still haven't got off the ground. It's a very safe way to do it. The alternative is to stand up and hang on things and lower, where your lower back comes into play, and it has problematic scenarios which might kick in. This covers you that way. When you're comfortable with it, you can then interlock your fingers and gently move away from you and off the ground. And at the same time, you'll be stretching your shoulders. This is a composite, concentrated way to get stretches in, so you don't have to spend a long time doing them. Because the more you can get the stretches done and sorted, become a little more loose, the more you can actually embark upon the exercise that you're going to do, and then not spend too much time. Relax, please, Chris. Now, to encompass as much as we can in as short as time as possible, without rushing your preparation, your routine, and of course, these also apply when you finish, because they loosen down as you tighten during your exercise. But we're now going to do something called the child's pose, or the prayer mat stretch. It comes under a number of titles, which most of you will probably recognise when it's done. You're sitting back on your haunches, and then coming forward, placing your hands on there and sliding forward, and thinking about gently pushing the thorax, the chest towards there when you reach. This will stretch you right down the sides of your body. The big muscles there called lats stretch that, and they actually do open up the lower back as well. So the lats otherwise have to be stretched, the muscles down the side of you, by hanging on to things and finding a place to hang, which isn't always easy to find, except the bottom of a stair, whatever. But this covers that base for you, so you can do the minimum. What you should be doing is developing it, also that gradually you can sit back on your heels and then keep reaching down and forward, then lower yourself from there. I said it goes on a number of titles, it covers a lot of bases. It separates the shoulder girdle from underneath and the armpit, and it opens there out. So any tension you'd have actually instilled when you're doing your workout will be undone by this, and before you do it, you open up more. But one outstanding rule of physiology is that the more you stretch a muscle, the more powerfully it contracts. So by stretching something, you strengthen it. It's one of the difficult things to get over the younger generation, that if you stretch a muscle, it makes it more powerful. The analogy is, just imagine a ski jumper. A ski jumper, the longer his downhill run, then the bigger the jump he's going to get. So the more you stretch your muscle, and the better it lies, the more shapely that it lies, and the stronger it is in its attachments. That applies to all muscle physiology. There's a one rule down the middle of it. Now, sitting down against the wall comfortably, with your lower back snuggled up against the wall, there's an unnameable sense of security that happens to support in your lower back, down in the area, it's called your lumbar and your sacral area. That area being supported gives you a sense of solidity when you do this. When the legs are straight when this exercise is done, the rear upper thigh is targeted. When the legs are slightly bent, the lower back is targeted. Okay, so what we'll do first of all with Chris is ask him to bring his feet together. And now, in a moment, exhale, then gradually walk down with his hands either side of his thighs until he feels his rear upper thighs just get to that annoying ache feel.
That's as far as I can.
That's fine.
Is this keeping my back straight?
No, just head around, but let's go to what, keep the focus on the rear of the thighs. Annoying ache, that's all. Anything more annoying can fight you. So you see, Chris at the moment feels it almost up the thighs. The back is involved, they're an inseparable team. But when the legs are straight, you stretch your rear upper thighs. The rear upper thighs should be first on your list. You sit in the car, you watch the television, okay? You sit at the computer desk, your rear upper thighs are always flexed. Added to which there is a third more pressure on the spinal column when you're in a seated position. So none of it helps, but if you can loosen up your rear upper thighs, you really do go a long, long way to helping any back problem, and backs flexed and back stretched help the lower rear upper thigh problem. So they work as a team. Stretch one, help the other. Okay, Chris, if you come back from that. Now if you slightly bend your legs, just a little bit, and less than that, you can come forward with your feet to about there. Okay. Okay, now then relax your feet. Okay, now walk forward with your hands again. And you'll find you go further. Now the reason for that is the fact now the actual rear upper thighs have taken a rear seat, if you like, and the person in the frame now is the back. So when the legs are bent and you lean forward, you'll get slightly further usually, unless you have a condition. But even with a condition, when you do this, if it's done carefully, it can help your condition. Okay? Post-operatively speaking, if you have had a procedure done, you need to take advice from your GP or your consultant. But if you're rehabbing somewhere down the line, by following the AA, the annoying ache rule, this will always help you. And it really does significantly contribute to back health. As you can see, Chris is in his pose now. Now, one commonly used exercise to stretch the abdominal muscles is something called the cobra. It's a move where you lie down and you straighten your arms and come up in an arch. And yes, it will stretch your stomach muscles, but you also put into the frame compressing your lumbar vertebrae. And if you have a situation in play, subclinical you don't know about, that in stretching here, you will compromise your back. So the best thing to do really, if you can stretch here without having to go up and straighten your arms, which causes a great many people a lot of problems. Yes, it helps some, but I've also seen it cause a lot of problems for many people, especially in the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine. So the way to get around this is to stay, as Chris is at the moment, in the elbows down position like that. Then the first thing that he does is to create a tension under his palms and the flat of his forearms, pulling back but not allowing them to drag, just keep the tension on. The second thing he does is then gently stick his chest out, and the third thing he does is then look up. And you'll find you'll actually incite it to stretch without having to straighten your arms to do it, and lifting the pelvis off the floor.
Do I keep my feet flat or like this?
Whichever you wish. Whichever you wish. Whichever you're comfortable.
Legs together or wide?
Whichever you're comfortable, whichever. It's personal. When you're doing that, then you keep tension on. Remember, as with all stretches, nothing starts to happen with all stretches, pre or post workout, nothing worthwhile or clinically effective begins until 15 seconds have passed, having reached the annoying ache. So if you do a minute stretch, you get 45 seconds of value. Often stretches are way too short. There are two reflexes, without going into the whole thing, there are two reflexes which need 15 seconds to come to an understanding. Then the developmental stretch process begins. And for those of you who want to look it up, they're the myotatic and the inverse myotatic. M-Y-O-T-A-T-I-C. Look it up and have a look. But they only begin to work as a partnership to give you extended flexibility when 15 seconds have passed. So as I said, a minute is 45 seconds of stretch development. Okay. Let's find out, Kristen. Get it for me, please, if you would. Now this next stretch, you'll see hundreds, thousands, millions of people doing it, and it's actually biomechanically, it's not good news at all. Okay? So Chris, if you can now hold on to the wall and lift up your right foot and grab it with your right hand. Now how many times have you seen people do this? Okay? It's actually wrong. Okay, just put that out, release for me. When anyone does that, what happens is that the force applied to the stretch, the shoulder carriage, is on the same side as the limb being stretched. So what happens is that the lower spine goes into an angle like this, okay? And it's called scoliosis. In this case, the right hand would be right hand scoliosis, the other side would be left hand scoliosis. So there's more pressure on one side than the other. The quadricep muscles, the front thighs you're trying to stretch, they don't run straight. Any anatomy drawing will show there's an angle, there's a diagonal aspect to them. So in actual fact, they should be pulled across a slight diagonal. So what you're trying to do is the proper stretch from the standing position should be applied where the diagonal nature of the front thighs is respected, observed, and a force is on the same side. And the very simple way to do that is for Chris to bend down and pick up with his left hand his right foot.
Assuming you can reach it.
That's it. No. The other side round. Yeah, do that one. Get your back on it, Chris.
Just about.
Yes. Okay.
I should mention that, as I said earlier, I'm of the right age range, but I also have back problems. That's why there's so much emphasis in these videos on safety.
So run that in there. So now you see Chris is now holding his right hand to his left leg. So the force on his right hand side, the stretched limb is on the left, and now the thigh muscles are being stretched diagonally, which is their true course. It's much more efficient, his middle back isn't at an angle, and it's a much safer way of stretching your front quad, your front thighs, the big groups. Okay, thank you, Chris. If you're lying on the ground, you can, by all means, if you're lying on your left hand side, grab your right foot to your right hand, like that, by all means. But if you're standing up to do it, you should never be left to left standing up, right to right. It should be like that, standing up, like that, always. And don't forget, when you are stretching, have something nearby. It's nothing to do with balance training. Have something near you and be secure. It's not required for you to wobble around or feel compromised in a stretch position because you can't keep your balance. It's irrelevant to the stretch process.
Right, we've got to promote this because they're paying for the video.
Right.
So this is nut butter punch, which we drink, and good stuff, drunk worldwide. Excuse me, are you drinking nut butter punch? Could you come in, please? So you're drinking nut butter punch, just as we are, and is it a good drink?
Yeah, it's perfect.
And are we paying you to say this?
No.
And we're not getting paid for this, so this is all a genuine plug for nut butter punch.